Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. So yeah, just a couple questions for you. How long have you been in hair restoration?
Well, I have been doing the plastic surgery for over 20 years now, but really wasn't interested in hair transplantation for the first probably like 10 years or so. So we started looking into these procedures when the technology arrived that actually changed my view about this hair transplantation procedures. So really I started my interest in hair transplantation when the NeoGraft showed up, which is about now I think 8 years or so ago, and we were actually one of the first centers in America to start using this machine.
Oh, wow.
And we really were pioneers in this technology here. And then right after that, probably I would say 2-3 years later, the ARTAS robotic system showed up and it got approved by FDA. And again, my center was one of the first in the world to receive that machine. I think my machine was number 2 or 3 in the world. So we were really together with 2 other doctors, developing this technology together with the company, because obviously the first version of that robot was different than we have now. So for the years that came afterwards, which is about 8 years now, the technology improved a lot. Speed of the robot improved a lot, and precision and everything else. So we were talking about the major advances over the years. So we started, and I'm still mainly in Chicago suburbs and downtown Chicago office, but also about 3 years ago, I opened 2 clinics in Poland, in Europe, also providing robotic hair transplantation, and we were one of the first, actually the first robotic system in the Eastern Europe and Central Europe. So we really started and pioneered that technology in that region. And since then, we opened another clinic in Warsaw, Poland. So there are really 4 locations for me nowadays, across the, we can say world, because it's really here in Europe. So altogether, it's interesting that it's hard to believe, but we transplanted over 1 million follicles with the robotic system. So it is pretty advanced experience that we have behind us.
Wow, that's really cool. So do you actually fly back and forth and do the procedures over in Europe too, or do you mostly?
Well, I don't actually perform procedures in Europe, but what we do is to fly the team here to America, to Chicago, and train them in our clinic here. And I go there and supervise the procedures and make sure that we have the same standards here and in Europe. And that really worked to our advantage, because really nobody else has this kind of experience and this kind of results that we can show. We have hundreds of photographs of patients, and I think I learned that from doing plastic surgery, that the before and after photos really are the most important thing, because just because somebody bought the robot or NeoGraft or any other machine doesn't mean that they actually can deliver. And as we all know, these machines are just the tools, so they have to be actually, operated by experienced people, and robot and NeoGraft and all these FUE machines are just the helpers in overall situation, because these procedures are quite complicated and quite lengthy, so it has to be done right.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's extremely important. Like you said, is just finding someone that has that experience. And I mean, what really better way to tell really if somebody has that experience is looking at, you said, the before and after pictures. And I think it's the same thing with any cosmetic surgery, like plastic surgery, and when you're going to when a woman goes to look for a breast aug, I mean, that's exactly what she's looking for, is who has done 1,000 of these things before and knows what he's doing, and who can I trust, basically. So yeah, that's really key. What do you think you enjoy most about what you do?
Well, I think that what was surprising to me, to tell the truth, initially, as I said, my work with plastic surgery goes way back than hair restoration. So when we decided to include hair restoration in our practice and in our clinic, I was worried that there will be a lot of unhappy men surrounding us afterwards, and that kind of was definitely my concern, that how is it going to work really in the large numbers, because obviously we plan to do it in the large numbers. So that was my biggest surprise, that actually if you do right thing and the procedures are performed right, satisfaction rate is very high. I would say approaching 100%. Of course, you're never going to satisfy everybody, but I think that most people that are not satisfied, they are just not educated enough in what happens and how it happens, and of course they also have so-called wishful thinking, that they can achieve something that really wasn't promised to them. But aside from this kind of situations, I think that the growth rate of the hair is actually amazing. I would say, again, approaching 100% would be transplant. And also the way these procedures are performed today, if they perform right, there's absolutely no telltale sign about it. To the point that even for somebody like me, who is looking at these cases and patients for many years, I can walk into the room with the full light and cannot tell if somebody had a hair transplant or not, which is obviously not true for a lot of transplants in the past, but also currently. I mean, I certainly see a lot of patients who already had the transplantation procedure somewhere else, and I walk into the consultation room, I don't even have to read the chart. I can tell that they were done, and they were done poorly. So and that's actually another interesting point, that in a practice like mine, probably 1/3 of what I do is the repeated procedures. Somebody who already had previous surgery somewhere, and they just want to repair it, or do more, or they're dissatisfied. So that's a warning sign that actually, across the industry, and across the hair restoration industry, I don't think that the satisfaction rate is that high. Judging from who comes to us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I know a lot of guys, just think of it as, the old, hair plug days. And a lot of people, when you think of transplant, that's what they think of. And, they don't realize that, even a lot of times your barber can't, if it's done right, your barber can't even really tell that it's been done. And that's the nice thing about it, kind of taking some time to actually grow in. A lot of people see that as a negative, but, I think it's more of a positive, the fact that, it's not, it's not just instantly you have hair the next day, and then everybody wonders where that hair came from. It takes a little time to grow back in. So close to 100%, not satisfaction rate, but your growth rate, that's pretty amazing. What do you think is average, like 80%?
Well, as I said, I don't think there's average across the world, because these procedures, again, they depend on the machines, but they also depend on this stuff that prevents the drying off of the grafts, placement, how deep you place them, how superficial, too deep. There are a lot of components of that. So the only thing I can tell is that if you want to go back and look at my webpage, we usually have pictures of before, right after the graft were placed, and then after growth. So you can tell from these pictures that nobody really counts that. I don't count, of course, the number of grafts, but you can, looking at the pictures, you can see that almost all of them grow. If not all. I'm sure it's never all of them. That's impossible. But you can tell that they usually grow majority, great majority of what we place. Now, I sometimes see a patient who comes to me and says, "Oh, I had 2,000 grafts transplanted, and what I see on his head is maybe 200." So that's obviously something went wrong, and it's I think most of the time either dishonest surgeons that just don't do what they tell, or what's probably more common is that the technique is not good, and they kind of let the graft dry, or do some other things that are preventing them from growth. And that's a big disappointment, because going back to what you said about the breast augmentation, I do a lot of these, but here at least you can replace the implants. switch them. You can do now hair. Problem is that we have a finite number of hair. So once you lose 2,000 grafts, really botched procedure, you lost them. You don't have them anymore. So obviously most patients have more grafts and we can do more, but at some point it's not enough, So that's I think a big decision maker for people that looking for a cheapest and place that offers really cheap solutions and that they are actually risking losing their hair. That's not only that the procedure is not done, but they also lost that amount of hair that was taken out, and that's just of that. The second thing is creation of scarring. That is sometimes impossible to cover up. Although I don't personally do any strip procedures and any FUT procedures, but again, probably 20% of or more even of my patients already had that done, and they can be pretty ugly. That's why I think one of the is some of the kind of a hidden message out there that these FUT procedures are healing great, and we can do you can continue having normal haircuts and stuff. I would say you never can have a short haircut for anybody, and even a relatively longer haircut can sometimes show a FUT scar, especially from the back. Like let's see, we sitting in a cinema, in a movie theater, and you sit behind somebody or on the airplane, you almost always can spot that scar unless the hair is really long. And there are ways to cover them too. We sometimes do transplants into the scar, so you can actually get the hair and transplant them into the scar, so that camouflages the scar. Although again, FUTs are pretty much forever scarring. It's you can camouflage it better, but if you're talking about the shaving of the head, they probably will be visible anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's again, I mean, like you said, with lack of experience, I mean, the FUT can leave you even worse than FUE if it's done wrong. And I mean, there are good, really good surgeons that can leave very, very minimal scarring, but like you said, it's for someone that wants a super short haircut at some point in their life, even a buzz in the back or whatever, FUE is definitely the option, the best option to go in that case. And let's talk a little bit about beard transplants. You guys started doing a lot of beard transplants. Is that, probably for people just like me, filling in the gaps there?
Yeah, that's a good example that you have that obviously doesn't bother you enough to do anything right now, but that's a very common request to fill up the gaps, and creating a different shapes. So all totally different situations, like transgender patients that they don't have any hair on the face. Facial hair is non-existent because they were women before, and even if with the hormones they usually don't grow a lot. So then we just completely create the beard and mustache or sometimes just goatee kind of situation. The other group that we frequently have requests of this kind of procedures are relatively young men who want to look older. They go into workforce and they kind of look teenagers rather than mature persons. So they kind of change their appearance by producing the facial hair, and they're looking more mature and older. And of course, also fashion. As you are sporting a beard, and many celebrities are now sporting beards, and that's what, of course, changes the whole situation, because people want to follow that. And with a good technique, it really leaves no scarring. We've done a lot of this, and when it's done right, even if you shave off the beard, you can't really tell that the procedure was performed. So it is a good procedure. Typically, we use the hair from the back of the head to do that, if it's available. Although the trick here is that we have to separate the grafts into the singles, because the beards are single grafts, not like on the most of the hair on the scalp is double, triples, and except for the front, you actually want the double, triple grafts because they want thicker. They want to look more natural and thicker. However, on the beard, we have to separate them. And sometimes we utilize body hair for that. We take the hair from the chest and put them on the beard or on the scalp, and they look already like on the chest. So, but I also done procedures beard to beard, like bottom of the beard to the top of the beard. So you really, if you, yeah, exactly. Nobody really cares that much about the bottom of the beard. So, and that's of course most natural because it's the same hair, the same place. So, but we haven't had much of a problem taking hair from the other parts of the body to the beard. That works well.
Awesome. Yeah. That was going to be my next question was about. I was surprised to hear that they take a lot of times a donor from the back because it seems like a different type of hair, but I've heard that it can actually look. Do you think that it grows when you take it from the back on the face? Is it noticeably different in the type of hair and the coarseness, or does it start to take on that coarseness because it's implanted into the face?
Actually, interesting story about the hair transplant is that the hair changes the qualities of the hair and the kind of texture of it and the behavior depends where it's placed. So, like for example, we take the hair from the chest to the scalp. I would say that they never good to create a hairline, because that's a little different. But as a filler, they look very natural, and the same happens with the hair from the back of the scalp transplanted to the face. One thing that is different is when we do the eyebrows, you have to cut them. You have to have a eyebrow haircut, just like you have a regular haircut, because they keep growing. So something that probably people don't realize, that if they put the hair in the eyebrows, they will be growing, So, but they still very natural and certainly much better than any tattoo work that is performed. And that always bothers me when I see these bad tattoos on the eyebrows. That it's really a small procedure to perform an eyebrow transplant instead of the tattooing, and it looks so much more natural and than kind of this tattooed eyebrows.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely. Yeah, when you really compare it, yeah, I mean, it's the tattooing can look okay, but again, same thing. It's just if you get something that is someone that's not experienced, I mean, it's very obvious on your face, so you don't really want to mess around with that.
Yeah, we actually sometimes what we do is people who already have tattoos, we just put the hair in between, and that looks fine because they have a darker area of the skin, but the hair grows through it, and so that looks like they had just mascara kind of on it on the hair. So that actually is a good portion of eyebrow transplant that we do, that people already have the tattoos, and we just kind of place the hair in the tattoos. And of course there are popular and typical situations, but there are also unusual cases that I've done, like for example, transferring hair from the scalp to the chest. I had some requests of patients that say everybody in the family has a hairy chest, and I don't, and they wanted to have it. So I also had a request to transfer and create a pubic hair. Apparently in the Asian countries, that's very important, and so we had really sometimes not typical requests, but bottom line is the hair can grow anywhere. It's just that whatever we want to do, it has to be done right, and then we can transplant hair.
Yeah, very interesting. So what do you think is the biggest pitfall that people fall into when choosing a good surgeon?
Say it again.
What do you think is the biggest pitfall from when people are looking for a good surgeon? What do you think is the number one most common mistake that people make?
Well, like everything else, the price is a big deal, because that's something that obviously people look at, and many still do, and I hear it, that they feel that it's the same machine, like in case of robot, or I just go somewhere else and it's cheaper and machines are the same. This is different than buying a car. You know, if you go and buy a car at one dealership or the other dealership, is really the same car. So if you truly can get better price, you're probably better off, you know, because you're not getting anything else. But here you're buying not only machine, but you're buying the whole team and the experience of that team and the results of that team. So obviously the way market works is that you know, the better you are, the more expensive is going to be the place. So I think this, if you go to the discount places, you're going to have discount results. You know, that's how it is in the world. At some point, of course, there are some celebrity surgeons that are, you know, really expensive and not necessarily much better. You know, they maybe made name for themselves, and that's something to also consider, that you don't necessarily want to look for somebody who is the most expensive in the world, because they may be very good, and they probably are, but they probably not that much better than some other doctors that do well. So bottom line is, do your research and don't look only for the price, because going back to what we said before, number of years these places are doing, it's important, number of cases done, because obviously experience is important, but the bottom line is the result. And if you don't see hundreds of pictures before and after, it's hard to believe it, that they actually can do it. And obviously everybody has to start somewhere, but that's how it should be starting, that the starting clinics should be offering cheaper prices, and people should know that, you know, they're getting inexperienced place for a cheaper price, and that makes sense if they don't care about it or don't have more money to spend, or but they should be informed about what they're getting, or should inform themselves about it.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense a lot. Yeah. It's been really informative and great talking with you. And, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on here was just because, you know, I've been seeing you around for a while, seeing your experience, seeing your just extensive, you know, before and afters in pretty much every category. And so, yeah, I really appreciate everything. Do you have any last advice for anyone that's interested in getting a transplant done? If they come and see you, you know, do you do free consults, or is it something that they can come and, you know, and do, you know?
Well, you know, we have, as I said, a couple locations in Chicago, downtown Chicago and the suburban Chicago, and you know, I don't know if you have any viewers from Poland or Europe. We offer that in Warsaw and other city there. But bottom line is that I think that you know, do your research. You know, whoever is looking into, do your research and make sure that. I think that's what was happening in the past, especially now maybe a little better, is that a lot of hair clinics are not really run in the way they should be run, and the quality is very poor in many places. So people like myself that are you know, board certified plastic surgeon, or at least board certified surgeons, they have been trained to performing procedures, and I treat hair transplant just as good as I treat my facelift patients or breast patients or anybody that we operate. So the standard of the plastic surgery board certified clinic is high, and that's what the same what we're trying to provide for our hair transplant patients. So the other advice is for me is, and of course, you know, I'm in this situation, but just because people are doing something else but hair doesn't mean that they are worse. You know, they may actually be better and adhering to the better standards than somebody who is doing hair, because a lot of these clinics are run by non-surgical specialties that really have no exposure to that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, doctor, it's been great talking with you, and thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.